Eyes podcast. This is a special live edition. We are going to be discussing a new survey that just came out from Barna, and hopefully this will be informative. I've got Rob Stoddard back in studio. How are you, Rob?
Doing good, Karen. Yeah, excited to talk about this. I mean, we've been waiting for updated stats. Not surprising, but a few surprises, I guess. So, anxious to get into these.
Yeah, and you're just coming off of conference season. So you've been out talking to lots and lots of pastors at conferences all over the country. And I think pastors and ministry leaders are going to be really interested in what the survey has to say. Would you agree?
Oh, I think so. And it's uncanny how many of the stats really bear out the conversations that we have with pastors week in and week out. So they're feeling a lot of this and confirming a lot of this, which is good to see. I think it's very accurate. So yeah, ready to talk.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to throw a PowerPoint up on the screen here. Awesome. Oh, there's our smiling faces, Rob. Looking good. All right. So,
I
like
don't
we
know
said,
about
we are
that.
going to be we're going to be reviewing the new report from Barna called Beyond the Porn Phenomenon. And this survey was actually done, I think, in conjunction with Pure Desire Ministries. And it just released I think it was last week, last Thursday. So we just wanted to make sure that we got some of the new stats out in front of our pastors and ministry leaders and priests. So you guys are well equipped. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right. So this is the first one, Rob. We're going to kind of look at this one. And for everybody at home kind of looking at the screen here, I want to walk you through what this is kind of showcasing. So on the left-hand side, the circle that says 2015, that is the data from the last survey. And then on the right-hand side is 2023. And just to kind of review what we have here, we have about a 14% increase in pornography use among U.S. adults. That is pretty substantial, Rob. I was kind of shocked to see these numbers, but knowing, technology and social media is pretty much putting this stuff in front of us constantly. I mean, I guess it's not terribly shocking, but did you take anything away from this that you thought was really interesting?
No, Karen, I think you're right. I think, we see the increase in the struggle amongst men and women and growing in women. And so the increase was not a surprise. It'd be great to dig into even the demographics behind this for men and for women, and we'll maybe take a look at some of that. But there's so much more here, but unfortunately, it is increasing.
Absolutely. Let's go to that next slide.
Yeah, this one, I'll jump into this one. 61% of adults reported viewing pornography, and over half of those, or about half of those, said no one knows. So a lot of anonymity there. The bottom one was one that really kind of shocked me a little bit, where 84% of porn users say they had no one to talk to or help them with pornography. And, this is so much of what we see. Porn use is just buried in anonymity. There's so much secrecy, there's so much shame around the issue of using pornography that this is not really surprising that no one's talking about it. The bottom piece, though, is where we talk with churches. Covenant Eyes is really all about helping people with accountability. I mean, the enemy loves when we keep things in darkness and when we hide things. It just helps keep us isolated. And, until we bring things out of the dark into the light, it's really awful hard to get rid of these things. And so helping people understand that we need to confess, we need to pray for each other, as James 5:16 says, and really start to bring this out of into the light. Until we do, a whole lot of people are going to be stuck in this. And so this is a great stat that we'll be able to share with leaders about the need for accountability, about the need for openness in the church, where we can talk about this and make safe places and processes for people to come forward in the church and find people to help and be able to share these things. So this was a really interesting stat to me, Karen.
For sure. Yeah. And I think it's a great opportunity for the church too. I think this is actually reveals the space where the church could really step in. So I'm
I
excited
think
to
so.
keep going here. All right. Next slide. So this one I think is going to be really interesting because it's the first really glimpse into Gen Z. we're not able to actually get statistics on Gen Z when the last survey came out because they were still elementary school and middle school age students. So this is our first look at that. And so what we're looking at here is consumption of porn. How often is someone viewing pornography? And they have it broken down by daily, weekly, once or twice a month, less often, or never. And so I want to just kind of highlight a couple of the interesting things. So among Gen Z and millennials, the daily usage is pretty neck and neck there. They are using pornography at about the same pace on a daily basis. The weekly consumption, again, is also very closely related between Gen Z and millennials. And as you remember, millennials were that first generation that really had technology kind of growing up with technology. And so that number does not shock me. Gen Z, of course, the once or twice a month, those numbers are pretty closely related. I think what's interesting to me about this is that the older generations, you start to see those numbers trail off a little bit, and I think that's pretty reflective of generations being raised without technology, maybe not utilizing technology in the same ways that the younger generations do, maybe not on TikTok and Instagram in the ways that Gen Z and millennials are. But certainly these are troubling trends, and it really doesn't surprise us based on what I've seen at conferences in the past few years. Rob, I feel like this statistic matches what we're hearing and seeing at the street level. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's some more slides coming up that really highlight what some of the younger generations are facing that older generations might not have. And so, good information. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide if we can. This one shouldn't be a surprise to anybody either. I mean, we've seen the advent of online videos are everywhere, online pictures. It's all about being online 24/7. And of course, our younger generations are leading that way. It is, again, telling that as we go down, the older generations, are still doing some other things that that the younger generations aren't. But this is a great slide, really, to talk with youth pastors and leaders about. When you think about the online videos in the depth of the images there, the hardcore pornography that the younger generations are exposed to, we've never seen this in the past. And so our young people are starting out with seeing this hardcore pornography and the damage it's doing to them and the places it's leading them. It's just so damaging. And so this again was not surprising, but there's a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next slide here. And of course, for everyone listening, if you just jumped in, these are the new stats that are from Barna. So all of this data is courtesy of Barna and their new report that just came out. And we'll tell you how to get your hands on this, this new survey at the end of this session here. This one I do want to bring up because it does highlight a little bit of a positive. So this one's going to be a little hard to digest, but over on the right-hand side, you'll see the statistics that I'm going to talk about. But 73% of adults stumble onto pornography without actively seeking it. In 2015, that number was 86%. So that number is lower now than it was in 2015. So people who don't want to see porn, don't want to accidentally stumble on it, there's a smaller population that is stumbling on it. So that is for those who never came across porn, that number grew 13%, which is a positive thing. That means that people that don't want to see it are not getting exposed. And Barna, in their study, highlighted a few areas that they think like why this is a trend and why this happened. They think heightened public awareness has really helped. So just talking more about this and exposure to pornography and the dangers, and then efforts by online platforms and social media sites to moderate content, they think is also helping. And then they also said that the wider adoption of filtering software and AI-powered technologies has helped as well. And I like to point out that that is exactly what Covenant Eyes does. So I'm glad to see that this number is going down. So people who don't want to accidentally stumble on porn, there is a way to avoid it by getting filtering software, making yourself aware of the dangers online, and then using the tools that the social media platforms provide the things that you can put into place to help protect yourself on those platforms as well. So this was kind of a positive that I just like to call out in that report. Any thoughts on that, Rob?
No, you said it well. I do want to add that efforts by online platforms and social media, that has been forced on them, unfortunately. It's not
Yes.
really the good graces of those social media sites that are doing this. They're being forced through groups like Nicosi and in states who have actually sued some of these social media companies and sites and force these. And so it is making a difference, which is positive. So
That's
yeah.
great. Yeah, good point there. I like that you called that
Yeah, I
out.
don't want to give too much credit to them there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
This slide here, again, very eye-opening. You know, it just shows the difference between men and women when we talk about pornography and the negative impact it has on a relationship. Only 9% of men thought that porn use was a negative in the relationship. But when you look at women, 52% said that this is a negative in the relationship. And that just shows the wide divide between the way men think about this and the way women think about this. And two, it really comes down to, you know, the issue of intimacy in the relationship. That's a high value for women. You know, God designed us to have intimacy in our relationships. And pornography begins to erode that or take away that intimacy. And, you know, the thing I really like about this stat or will be able to use is really helping churches in the Christian community understand this difference. So as we're helping men and women with this issue, understanding that difference, right now we can do a pretty good job of coming alongside the man who's struggling and help them through that. But often in our churches, we're ignoring the heavy damage that it's doing to the spouse. You know, the feeling of betrayal, of hurt, of feeling inadequate, the loss of trust in the relationship. Spouses need as much healing as somebody going through this struggle. And so helping churches understand this, helping them to have resources that will help both the man and the woman through this in recovery, it's going to be a good thing. And so unfortunately, you know, a tough stat here, but I think it will do some good. So any additional thoughts on that, Karen?
No, I think you did that. You did a great job covering this slide. Yeah, and I think it just kind of ties into this next one, which this is an older stat, but if we, and anybody that's been to any of our presentations has heard this a million times over, but 56% of divorces state that one spouse's use of pornography contributed to their divorce. And so, you know, looking at those numbers, you know, that definitely plays into that factor. When the couple is not aligned and they, you know, view pornography differently, you know, if a man doesn't think that it's an issue and the woman does, I mean, that can create a lot of conflict in a marriage and ultimately can lead to divorce if it's not addressed. And I think women certainly in the church it's a great opportunity for our churches out there to really come alongside spouses and support them well and get men the recovery that they need in that process. We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, this one, the roots of today's porn problem, why it's more of a problem. These again should not be anything surprising. You know, the availability now, the 24/7 access, the number of people who are on devices and have phones, social media, just how rampant that is everywhere. But a couple of really kind of interesting things in here. The growing change in our culture where we're really beginning to normalize this sexualized culture, I think is really starting to play a role in the porn issue. And I think that's only going to continue to increase. And then I do want to highlight that last one. It's the smallest percentage wise that was named, but I think again it's a growing problem. You know, this current younger generation has been dubbed the loneliest generation, and we're starting to see that loneliness played out. People are turning to pornography to fill that void, to fill that loneliness that's there. And so we're seeing that come up more and more often nowadays. And so that's one to really keep an eye on and how that grows. And so, let's go on to the next slide here.
This is just a quote we wanted to throw in there as a reminder that any porn use, according to Dr. Samuel Perry with the University of Oklahoma, that any porn use is associated with declines in religious commitment and behavior. So attending services, prayer, engaging in small group, all that stuff. And this is a problem because as people, and you kind of talked a little bit about this, with the loneliness factor, but people withdraw, when they're sinning and they're, viewing pornography, they feel guilt, they feel shame, they withdraw, they feel lonely, and they stop engaging in their churches. And there's a whole study by Dr. Perry that I would definitely encourage any ministry leaders out there that are listening to check out, because it actually has more statistics on how it impacts church going, volunteer work, engagement, all the rest. And I just think it's really important that we keep that in mind, because pornography is a poison and it really, really needs to be addressed in the church. Let's go to that next slide.
Yeah, this one, and again, this is an old stat back from the 2015 study. At that time, only 7% of churches had any active ministry to help the church. And we start here because we want to go to the next slide and kind of show you where that's at now.
Yeah, this is a positive, Rob. I like seeing this. This is some good news.
Yeah, it looks like, wow, that's not a big difference, 3%. But that 3%, when you look at churches across, the country here, that really represents 9 to 10,000 churches who have now engaged in having ministry to help people in this area. So although it's a small increase, it really is an increase. And I think, again, there's so many things that go into that. The culture, we're hearing about it so much more. People are struggling more, and so more people are coming forward. But too, I think efforts of ministries like ours that really are coming alongside the church and helping raise the awareness of this issue, I think all those things are contributing. So
yeah,
go ahead,
and I would
Carrie.
actually, yeah, and I would even throw in there that our pastors and ministry leaders are taking the issue more seriously, and they're talking about it more frequently, which I think is commendable. I'm just so happy to see that number go up. So let's move on to this one here. So this one was really geared towards Christians and churchgoers, and it was a question of, to what extent do you consider addressing the topic of pornography as compulsive sexual behavior important to your church? So this is kind of interesting, because when asking these churchgoers, should the church basically address pornography and compulsive sexual behavior, more than half in every single demographic said yes. So we're looking at 62% of Gen Z. Gen Z wants us to talk about this. Millennials want us to talk about this. Gen X wants us to talk about this. And the boomers are coming in a little light, but that's okay. We'll bring them around. But this is good that they feel that this is something that they would like their churches to talk about and to address. And so that rolls kind of right into the next stat, courtesy of Barna. And I'll let you cover that one.
Yeah. So pastors really on the problem, needing to address it. I find this just a little disconcerting that so many pastors realize that it's important to address this. I mean, 81% believe the ministries need to address pornography. Church teaching needs to center around this. They know that porn is a bigger problem than what it was 20 years ago, but yet we still see that only 10% of churches really have any active ministry. So there's a disconnect there. We need to really kind of begin to understand that a little better, of whether, why churches aren't doing more, knowing that this is such a problem. So interesting
Absolutely.
Stat here. So
Yeah,
let's go to the
that
next
is
one.
really. Sorry. Thinking about Christian churches and other religious organizations, asking these Christians what approaches do they believe they could take that would be most effective in assisting people in overcoming compulsive sexual behavior like pornography. So when asking Christians this question, I think this was interesting because they They called out providing access to professional counseling or therapy services as the highest on the list. And then the second highest was promoting healthy discussions around sexual behaviors that emphasize moral values. And among Christians, those were the top two called out, which I think are interesting because a lot of smaller churches don't necessarily have biblical counselors or professional counseling staff in their church. So having access to those, maybe having a network that pastors can refer people to, sounds like there might be some value in having that. And so one of the things I know you do, and I know our church team does as a whole, is we try to connect pastors and ministry leaders with trusted counselors and therapy services. And so that's why we have those guests on our podcast all the time, to try to introduce some of those organizations to our ministry leaders so that they can have a Rolodex of people that they can lean into and trust for that type of services. Did you find anything else interesting with this particular stat, Rob?
I did. I think it comes from those bottom two. The low number percentage seeing that offering spiritual guidance, prayer, teaching what the Bible says is a little bit of a red flag in our church. We know that pornography struggles, pornography use is really, it comes down to a heart issue. It's a sin issue. And for churches, pastors I talk to all the time, they realize this is a discipleship issue. This is a spiritual issue that we need to do a better job at. So having Christians call out this at such a low number, I think we're missing a little bit that idea that, hey, Christ is the answer to this.
Yes.
Drawing closer, growing our relationship with Christ is the answer to getting pornography out of our life. And so we certainly hope and we want to come alongside churches to help them have resources and to think about that piece of this. So
Absolutely.
anyway.
No, that's a really good call out. I love that. And then the next slide we're going to look at is practicing Christians are more likely to see pastors as a source of help, which makes sense because non-practicing Christians and non-Christians, obviously that would, there was non-Christians that look to pastors for help, which, that's great. But the number, though, was 34%. So, that's kind of interesting. To me, it just expresses an opportunity that, as Christians, I mean, typically if I'm struggling with any type of issue, the Bible and God's word is where I go first. But often if I'm looking for wisdom, I will lean into my pastor. So I would really like to see that number higher in this particular space. What do you think is causing this, Rob, that Christians don't think of their pastors when it comes to issues like pornography?
Yeah, I would have to say it really does come down to that shame issue. There's so much personal shame and guilt around the issue of pornography. Coming forward to the church, to your pastor, can be hard, and I think it's one of the major stumbling blocks for people to get help. And so I really think it centers around that. But it just goes back to what we've been saying. As churches, we have to create that safe place, that safe process for people to know they can come forward in grace, get help. And so I think as we do that better, this number will go up.
Absolutely. I love that. All right.
All right. This one.
You got this one? Okay.
Yeah, sure. This one is from youth leadership, strategies on how to help people. And we're seeing a lot of the same things we saw earlier in some of the other slides, but that personal counseling, mentoring, groups, all of those things, youth pastors know that's been helping. And we did want to point out, over almost 77% of youth pastors saw internet monitoring, filtering as being useful. And I think the more and more we're able to help in that area, the better. But we certainly want to come along, youth pastors, and say, yes, let's not just do one of these, let's do many of these and just layer our effectiveness in how we help kids in this area. But your thoughts on this one, Karen?
Yeah, no, this was good. And of course, this is the perspective of youth leaders, and what works. And I'm glad to see that prayer was up there, in the top 3. I'd love to see that even higher. Of course, I think that's untapped power that we have right there. The power of prayer cannot be underestimated. But I'm glad to see that they're talking about accountability groups and recovery groups. Recovery groups for youth, that's a new space. I actually don't know of many recovery specific groups for young people, but I love the idea of having accountability groups and developing accountability among our youth, because if you can develop that skill set when they're in those formative ages, they will take that through the rest of their life. They'll bring that into their marriages, into their families. So I love that they're aware of the value and the importance of accountability. And also, I like seeing that they understand that internet monitoring or filtering or services like Covenant Eyes can really help be the guardrails to help train our youth to navigate technology. So yeah, those are just a couple of thoughts on that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, this one. Okay, so this again was a question to U.S. adults. And basically it was, if you or a friend were struggling with pornography, which of the following do you see as the most effective form of treatment? And 56% thought therapy and counseling was the way to go. 28% said addiction or recovery resources. 27% said engagement in positive hobbies and activities. Then we've got a recovery group and support of friends trailing after that. I think that's interesting. It kind of ties into a couple of slides back where we were talking about some of the strategies that people want to lean into. But I think that addiction recovery resource section, that's good to see that people acknowledge that that's helpful and important, because that's something that at Covenant Eyes specifically, we put a lot of value in that. We actually developed an app that is loaded with the best and world class recovery resources. We've got programs for every demographic. We've got resources for parents. It's just really, really solid stuff in there. So I'm glad to see that made the list. Any thoughts on that, Rob?
No, I agree with you that individuals getting that individualized help where they really can look at what's behind the struggle and how to address it is so important. And you're right. That's really why we're leaning into that recovery space more and more and bringing more things out. So great. Let's go to the next slide. This one, we'll start, just want to share some resources that we have to come alongside churches and then individuals in the church. Our 5 stones, really keying on the story of David picking up the 5 smooth stones to slay Goliath. We see porn in the church as a Goliath. And pastors, we know they don't have the resources. They often wonder how to approach this issue, how to fight it. So we've developed this 5 stones, just taking our key resources for men, for women, for couples, families, and leaders, just bundling that into a great resource for the church. So leaders can take this, they can help other leaders train up and educate, and then have resources for all of those different demographics in the church. These are all free resources. They can order things offline to have on hand, cards to hand out to individuals, the brochures with links to these resources, and just trying to make it easy. So next slide.
And this one really is just highlighting another tool, because, we presented you with a lot of interesting statistics from Barna, and our hope is not to overwhelm you with data or, to make it seem bleak, because there is hope. And I think that the church is that hope. I think we can be that light. Christ has empowered us to be a hope and a light to others. And part of that is equipping people with practical tools that help them address pornography. And I think the most practical tool that's out there, that's available, is really the Covenant Eyes software. So I believe that our software and our Victory app coupled together are powerful, powerful tools that can help people really have guardrails and accountability in their life so that they can overcome this and actually find freedom, so that they can go out and serve in the community and help other people find freedom as well. So we wanted to highlight that, this tool is available, and we want all pastors and ministry leaders that need help on how to navigate it, how to use it, to reach out to us and let us know. Let's go to that next slide.
Yeah. So one more slide, and this really kind of comes alongside that stat that only 10% of our churches have ministry to deal with this. And often we find that they really just struggle with knowing what to do. Last year, we put out The Healing Church, written by Sam Black from Covenant Eyes. This is a church or a book written to church leaders and pastors, helping them just understand this issue at a much deeper level, understanding how to protect leaders, understanding also why the church needs to step into this issue and deal with it a little deeper, but also some really practical ideas of how you do that. And, there's no one size fits all in terms of how to do this in the church. Every church is different. Every church has different sizes, demographics. This really helps churches, though, think about how to get started. And along with it, we have a 12-week Bible study for groups to dive into this, either one-on-one or small groups. So these are just great resources, really, to help that church get started with, having resources in programs to help the members in the church. Next, and final, I think.
Yes. And so all of these stats that we shared with you were part of this new report from Barna. So that, again, the name of the report is Beyond the Porn Phenomenon. We did put a link up on the screen there. You can actually go to Barna's website and you can order a copy of this for yourself. And I would encourage ministry leaders to absolutely take advantage of that. Have these stats accessible, because a lot of times when you're talking about pornography in the church, people want to see the data, right? A lot of people like that science and the data that's compelling to them. Some people are, moved by stories and emotion, and some want the raw scientific data. So this can be a tool in your arsenal, really, having those numbers to showcase how profound pornography is in the church and how it's impacting so many. And that can also help you overcome any challenges to people that maybe are uncomfortable talking about this, because if you look around the church and we see how many people are struggling, we would not want to watch our fellow church goers drowning. We would throw a life vest at them and help them and pull them in. We want to help the people that are struggling around us. And so I believe that having this data is so, so important. We hope that, we didn't share all of it with you. There's so much in here and we don't want to give it all away. We want you to get a copy of this. But we also want to let you know that Covenant Eyes is 100% committed to providing you resources. We have a team that's established here at Covenant Eyes to serve the church, to provide you the 5 stones, the Healing Church, all the tools and resources that we can give you to help you fight back against pornography. Rob, in closing today, do you have any words of wisdom or hope for our leaders out there that might be feeling a little stressed out by these stats?
Yeah, they can be overwhelming, and I think there's a disconnect. We don't see as many people coming forward, so in the church we don't always understand the depth of this issue, the gravity of it. And these stats will help bridge that and help give an understanding about that. But the key thing, and you said it, is we're here to help with resources and people, and there are others out there to help also. So we just want to come alongside in this fight. We got to keep moving forward in attacking this problem. And so we need to do that together. And this is a great step to that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this live stream today. We appreciate it. If you're catching us on the replay, wonderful. Be sure to share this far and wide. Let's get some of these stats in front of other ministry leaders. And then when you're ready, reach out to Covenant Eyes Church team. If you go to the Covenant Eyes website, covenanteyes.com, and go to our church page, you will actually be able to connect directly with our team, and we are here to serve. So reach out to us at any time. Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless. Take care. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.